Hello, welcome to my show. My name's Patrick. Here, let me kind of get in the middle a little bit. Thank you for joining us. So much is happening. I did a really nice video this morning, 30 minutes, and then it froze. And my past subscribers know that happens with my equipment. I have a real nice computer. I've had it for 12 years. It's an Apple. And it's really worked well. I think I changed the hard drive. And Apple is kind of worth the money if you have the money at the time. I don't have my Grail right now, my Grail cup, the Holy Grail, Patrick's Grail. Everybody deserves a Grail. You should have it. I don't have it with me. But somebody mentioned to me a couple days ago, they're further finding more and more proof that authenticating the Shroud of Turin. And they have the providence where they followed it through history. And I would say my generation, everybody thought it was from like 1200 AD. And it's been pushed back all the way back to the time of the crucifix. And it's pretty overwhelming, the evidence. My dowsing, independently of all that, says it is the shroud. And that's why I put it on my Grail cup. I have a rendering on it, a picture, and then I got a rendering of like what that person would look like. And the dowsing said, that's about 75%, 80% accurate, And there's other things. It's just intriguing. It would be nice if they would let me into the Cathedral of Milan so I can cut a little piece off and put it in my wallet or wear it. I would definitely wear it if you had the opportunity. And that's why they have relics in the old church. And they would do things like Saint Benedict is probably the most powerful Christian saint because he was 1,500 years ago. And they use his... I gotta sneeze. Excuse me. Ooh, excuse me. All the pollen is out and the dust, and I love the beginning of spring, and also it makes me sneeze once in a while. But thank you. So, Saint Benedict is just old, and he's a really interesting person, and he has a Christ vibration when you measure him. And if you can get a relic of his, that is anything that touched him in his life would be special. And they even do this for like, I had a friend who inherited some of Sun Bear's things. He knew Sun Bear. And that's because they all kind of came out of the Bay Area. Sun Bear came, he was a Chippewa medicine man. So, a lot of the Native Americans didn't like him because they said he was giving away secrets. And there was nothing there to give away. It's just plain basic stuff, spiritual information. And he wrote a book. I read the book 30 years ago, I guess, 40 years ago. But people, other Native Americans didn't like it. He had a dream to tell him to do this, and he followed his dream. And so that's the kind of perseverance you would need in life. It's a spiritual perseverance. You have to do what you're guided, especially if you're sane. Now, there's a lot of insane people out there talking like they're not. They're just talking gibberish. They're talking spirits floating around in the lower astral. A lot of the channeled materials is low vibration, and it's because of two things. One, the person who's channeling is low vibration, or two, the spirit coming through is low vibration. So that's why you have to stick with some of these Buddhists in the monasteries. You remember they showed it in the movie. Might have been 7 Years in Tibet. I read that book when it first came out, I believe. And then Brad Pitt played in the movie. And then they go, he was a Nazi. It's just like everybody's a Nazi. It's like in Russia, everybody's a member of the military. You're it. You don't have a choice. You have a war to fight, and they do it. And so they kind of blew it up out of context. They weren't speaking the truth about the situation. And he was an okay guy, and I remember the book clearly. I didn't want to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the relics. And anyway, they got a pipe that Sun Bear would use occasionally, and they got it. And I never did see it. They never offered me to see it. I would like to have seen it. But anyway, so the church does the same thing. If there's a super saint dies, someone who is a Christ conscious, and they go down lower. I mean, you can get relics of just average people, and that's not really nice. But someone like Saint Francis of Assisi, by the time he died, he was a Christ figure. So if you got anything near that part of his life, be very high vibration. They try to push him out of the church as well. The higher you go vibrationally, they might try to excommunicate you, kick you out of the church. And all of them did. St. Francis, and he bilocated and spoke to them. Bilocated is like his spiritual body projected to the Vatican, and he went and he convinced them in his spatial body. But they didn't know that. They thought it was a physical body. And the other person, Padre Pio, I believe, did that too. And when John Paul got shot, they tried to execute him, the New World Order, but they blamed it on a Turkish guy. But it was really a Freemason hit on him. When he was in the hospital, there's this woman, you can look it up, there's this woman who helped him out to get through the gunshot wound in the hospital, and she bilocated all the time. She was known for it, and she was in the hospital room. And a lot of times people will say that's an angel, if somebody's projecting. You can project yourself, it's a skill, but it's really something the higher vibration people use. Most channels, if you go into the New Age books and they're channeled, they're not worth reading. I had a co-worker one time. I was working in this place, and she was into that sort of thing, all the channeling. And she goes, I'll only read channel books now for the rest of my life. But the truth being known, only about 20% of those books are worth reading. The other 80 are average or below average vibration from the channel or for who they're connecting. Sometimes you connect to yourself. Edgar Casey connected to his higher self. It's a part of him, and he has his shields up, and he was a higher vibration, and his material's pretty good. I just, as a side note here, I think his things are all the herbal and those things are helpful. You can add them to your other knowledge and bring them all together. That's very helpful. He got a lot of history right, but the history that's not, when you look at it, and I douse it, only one third of his predictions apply to us on this timeline today. The other 2/3 are somewhere else. That already occurred. It's on another timeline. It doesn't affect us, and that becomes an issue. People are going, well, how come all these channels or psychics are wrong? They're not wrong. We just keep going off. We're right in that process now. A group of souls are going to go off. I didn't even know. We'll wake up one day. I don't think we'll know it because in our head, everything is affected. The newspapers from 1910 will be different. They'll change automatically. It's all like The Matrix in a way from the movie. By the way, when that movie was written, it was a 10. It was a really good movie. Now this 10 is on a scale of 1 through 30, okay? 1 through 32, it's a 10. It's a high vibration for a movie. Would be one of the highest movies made. Then they stole the script from this guy, and then they rewrote it and they made it. The first Matrix was a 5, and still, that's for a Hollywood movie unheard of. It's average consciousness, and what that is you can understand it. You went there and you understood the concept. Maybe if they made it at the 10 level, it's above the head, literally, of most of the population, and maybe it wouldn't have worked. But probably it was more a nefarious reason. They dumbed it down. They stole it, which they always do. And then that's the first Matrix. And then when I watched the second one, I go, this is stupid. Why didn't anybody say anything? Why the movie actors? Why didn't they say anything? Oh, then they're underground and they're like they got an underground thing like there's Star Wars underwater and they got ranks and little, it's all gibble. The others, and then they end it. I remember they number 3. So those were just so you know. I'm going to go fast. I did a video this morning. It was really really good, and it froze up on me and I lost it all. So I do try. I'm sorry. I have some issues, and some of it's me. It's just me. Sometimes I give out information that I shouldn't give out, and sometimes the computer will just freeze. I'm sorry. I don't know all the answers on that on the energy level. We're not ready for a lot of it. Like when the second movie is a 1 or even a 0. There's a 1. Excuse me. There's a 1. So it's Satan. It's Lucifer. Give me the third one. Give me the fourth one. They're all Lucifer. They're all serving Satan. But the first one was a 5. And that was they're giving people on a possible structure of the universe for them, their soul, what life is about, how we're trapped in this system of everything. And there's rules to the game of life. And a lot of the Christian things are correct, but not quite correct. It's a minefield. And I was going through that. I have my $4 Bible. It's a Protestant Bible. I prefer to have a Catholic one because their iterations from the original text are fewer and less interpretive. They got a better, more exact. And I've been studying what's the difference between the Catholics have like 10 different versions. Did you know that? Literally 10 different versions. For example, they have an Ignacio, and they actually have a good news gospel. Just like the Protestant one, where they dumb it down to like the 8th grade level. And guess what? It's a great vibration. Isn't that? Because what's the intention of the Good News Bible or gospel? Is to make it more understandable and to let people, because you're still, the intent of writing some of those things like Revelation 22, the intention is more important than the actual interpretation. That's what it's saying. So you have all these different interpretations. Then you go out and you compare all the Protestant Bibles to, let's say, the Greek Orthodox. Jesus knew ancient Greek, and he could speak it. And so that's why ancient Greek is so important. It was the language of commerce in the area for the whole Mediterranean. I mean, everybody, I think roughly 60% of Judea, of the Jews, spoke Greek, ancient Greek. That's kind of interesting. And fewer spoke Latin, which was the legal law, and the business dealings are Greek. If you were in that day and you go, which one, and let's say you're Jewish and you spoke Hebrew, and you go, what would your second language be? If you were all over the world today, which language would you speak as a second language? It's easy. It's the one of business. The one of business for Judea at the time was Greek, and the one for our world is American English. But sometimes you can understand the English. They have a couple of shows on BBC. Even Brad Pitt movie where he played the gypsy. Remember that one? I forget what it was. And his character, the gypsies come out of the encampment with the trailers, the caravans they call them, and they start speaking. You can't understand a word, and it's like English. And I think they did it on purpose because sometimes I think I would almost say of all the English dialects, the Scottish might be and especially if they never get out of Scotland, they're in Scotland all their life and they go onto a video, and sometimes like they're from a rural section, that's pretty thick. It's kind of hard. Sometimes for me, I've been to East Africa, West Africa, they're English speakers, and sometimes the Nigerians were very difficult for me to understand. And they're talking to me, and I let go. My secret is I let go. I don't try to but it's still difficult. I just let go of my head and don't overthink it, and try to listen to what they're saying. But I think I as I get older, more and more the world is speaking like an American accent because they have your choice. You want an American accent or British or whatever. And they're both fine, you know, but you get some of those dialects that are remote and they don't have exposure to too much TV or internet. And, they will, sometimes it's difficult for me and I have to try. And sometimes I have to embarrass myself, say, could you repeat that? That's what you have to do. Anyway, what was I talking about? Matrix is, the first one is the only one to watch. All the other ones are evil. Evil definition is they drink blood. To get satanic, you have to drink blood. Now, you don't have to kill a child, but frequently that's the case. That's how you get there. It's difficult to be a zero, but we have a lot of them in our lives because that's evil rises to the top in this universe. And the other thing is, and I agree with some of the exorcists, and they have said that ultimately God runs the show. But on this physical plane, it's Lucifer or Satan that has dominion over this world. And it's like a test. And I kind of disagree with them on a few things. But they do what they do. And it's very interesting to listen to them if you ever have a chance. There's like 5 or 6 exorcist Catholic priests. And you learn a lot, because you learn a lot about the old church, the old Catholic Church, which was kind of destroyed in a palace coup in 1965. And Fatima, you always hear about Fatima prophecy. I personally think it's about the collapse of the Catholic Church. And from that, our Christianity will be resurrected. But it'll be completely different than what we know. It's going to be completely different. I would say all the religions of the world will collapse. It's just not the church. It's just that mankind, we have lowered vibration men for the last 2,000 years, have tinkered with it, and over time, you got away from it. That's why when you're looking for these translations of these older Bibles that are closer to the source, well, it's going to be Greek. And then you got Aramaic, which is Assyrian, like over in Syria. There's one from the 1960s. I used to have it, and but it's probably one of the better translations. And the Ethiopian is a good translation, and things like that. And I saw Deepak Chakra. What is that his name? I don't care for him. I think he's filled with misinformation, and he's always attacking American Christianity or Christianity like Hinduism is better. It's not. It's nonsense, all right? It's all, you can do what you want, but when you have to attack another thing. So he writes all these new age books. He's a low vibration. Did you know that? He's very low. He's driven by ambition and money. That's his thing. And he's got false. He doesn't know the difference between right or wrong. So he got on this show. I just stumbled upon it. And it was some of these preachers actually speak the Bible backwards in their sleep. They know the whole thing. They know the whole theology. And I see it both in Protestants and certain Catholic realms. They just know all this stuff. They just consume their whole life with it. They like the anthropology, archaeology. They like the words. They like the Latin, the Greek, and they just know all the stuff. They know all about the Upanishads, not the Upanishads, the other guys. The Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Thomas, which are not included because of the Council of Nicaea and things like that. Enoch, I don't know if Enoch was taken out of those councils, but they showed up and some have been found. Two shepherd boys find a jar filled with the Nag Hammadi scrolls. I don't know, but that's the story. And now we have a copy of that. But we already found copies elsewhere like the Dead Sea Scrolls and a lot of these other scrolls they have found, they include the Gospel of Thomas. So they actually have different copies of it, handwritten. It's really trippy. And if you get a handwritten, I have it. If you get a handwritten, like a picture of it, you could frame it, put it on your room. The Gospel of Thomas. It's written in Aramaic or something, one of the ancient languages. It's going to be a high vibration. That whole gospel, in fact, should be canon, and it's not. Enoch is extremely, it's 32.2. It is a Christ vibration. And I have it 100 years before anything in the New Testament, all right? It is, the Old Testament, excuse me. It is old. It is old, it is very high, and it's pretty funny because it's really strict. It's really strict. And he either has a dream or he goes up in his chariot and talks to God. And it might have been a pole shift. You go up in a chariot, you sit out the pole shift, and you come back and you give all this teaching. Or the flood. Could have been the flood. So I just wanted to point some of those things out. The best Bible. So I was going to get to the best Bible. I don't know. That's ultimately, I don't know. But I did vibrate it. I do see that if you're using those high vibration charts and prayers or paragraphs in the New Testament, in Psalms, they are Christ, which is universal, the highest vibration possible on a physical 3D world. And they're not all lined up, they're just here and there. But that's it. The rest of the Old Testament is Old Testament. It's during the Roman time, pre-Roman time. The whole planet was a lower vibration. The whole planet. I have Machu Picchu, the pyramids, and I have the Druid stuff. They're not the same. The Druids are not simultaneous with the Stonehenge. But Stonehenge, probably a blood sacrifice location. The pyramids in Mexico, all blood sacrifice. They killed 63,000. Oh, this is the advanced civilization, by the way. You know. Oh, here are the Spanish coming up. Let's go kill 60,000 sacrifice in a foot of blood on them. You know, the whole planet was turning over. The whole thing about this Jesus story is there is energy there. So we don't need the historical. I don't need anything physical from that world. The writings alone they're finding, you can see this high vibration. It's not found elsewhere. It's not. And then also we had the giants walking around, which are probably the Nephilim and things. It's kind of fun. And what I have come up with is kind of different, yet a lot of people agree with it. They independently through another path. So don't, the pyramids I have is really dark, but it has a lot of different functions. It's like it has a spiritual function. It has stealing energy from Mother Earth, let's say, and shooting it to some dying civilization in space. Yes, they're all true. They're beautiful. And who built them? I think the Jews probably helped build them. They were the Egyptians mixed in with a bunch of ET travelers, and it's kind of complicated. Jesus spent time there, so he knows the story. He is a historical figure, like I said. I said this to some of you before, but I wanted to say Enoch is very important. It's a separate book. The Ethiopian Bible and the Greek ones, they'll include parts of Enoch, and there's 3 different ones, and I think it's very interesting. The Slovak one, Enoch, he goes up in a chariot. He physically, it's not a dream, it's not a vision. He goes up in this chariot. Well, it's probably a spaceship. He goes up and he talks to high beings. Now this whole thing about this lady went up to Montana. You remember her? And she wrote. You know what I'm talking about. She's the first one to bring out Enoch, really in America, in a way. She published it. Well, there's no copyright, but maybe on the translation. But she published it as a white book. And in the 1960s, all the hippie kids kind of got a hold of it. The other one is the Aquarian Gospels. and the hippie kids kind of got a hold of that. And I read it a couple of years ago. I went through it. It's like it's not the same. It's very low. It was written by a Khazar in 1910. And the whole point of the Khazar Mafia is to mislead, be like a red herring. The whole thing is not really worthy of any respect. Not like like the Lord's Prayer is great. I don't even know if it's in that, but it was channeled. It was a channeled book, and so is Urantia. Urantia is a channeled book, but by several channels. The first guy that went through and started the whole project, I think he was pretty high. He was describing the history of humanity, and then he goes up to the time of Jesus and like, I don't know, it was a third or half the book is about Jesus year by year, and I don't. You have to almost go by chapter because one guy is high and the other 4 or 5 channels are so-so. So that's going to impact the power and the truthfulness. So you have to kind of do that. That's why I get most of the New Age books for the last 50 years are Khazar books. That's what they are. They come from that conscience. More importantly, they come from that energy. And Khazarian energy is very low. That's it. It's very low. Certain monasteries that produce monks are really high. And they produce a way of living and discipline that most of us would find difficult. But you get up, you have breakfast, you say some prayers, you sing the chants. What does that do? It all moves your consciousness. It moves your energy higher and higher and higher. Those guys all get high. When I was in Rome one time, I went down the Via Veneto, and about 2/3 down, you start out from Bonaparte Park, you walk past the embassy, and they have outdoor cafes. And all the Italians can't stand you because you're an American. But I blended in kind of well, except for the blondish orange hair. And there's this, near the base of the Via Veneto, there's this chapel. And you can go into it. It might be a couple dollars to get into it. I can't remember. And there's a monk there. There's a monk. And that chapel, they have a monastery outside of Rome. And when the monks die, if there's a special monk that die, and that's what happens. When a high vibration monk dies, he decomposes. I don't know. They prepare the bones, but you go into this room on the Via Veneto and you walk. And it's just bones, skulls, and it's all these designs, and these are all the high monks of the last 1,000 years for this monastery. And I don't know if it's still there, anything, but I had a postcard. I wish I could see it. But it's the same thing. You want the relics, the bones of those guys that were, because it'll lift up your room. So I went in, I was in high school, and I walked around. It's not overly big, but it's a couple rooms with all these bones and the designs. And I was thinking how I approached it as a teenager, and I saw it as, I was just looking at like, well, what is this culture? What is going on here? That's kind of like what you do. And if you're not conscious of the energetic part, it doesn't make sense. But from the energy point of view, oh, this whole chamber, if you spent a night in one of the rooms, they close it that evening, you spend a night there, you're going to be having conversations with saints. That's what it was. They go, that's a place you want to be. But you don't want to be out in a graveyard with just any nilly. And I had a dream where, I know I'm going off tangent, I'm sorry. I had a dream where I went off, I was selling stuff. I'm being vague. But there's this huge subdivision. And outside the boundaries of the subdivision was you're going down to this little river. And there used to be Indian tribes around there, kind of. They weren't there, but at some time they were. When the Western Europeans came in, they kind of banged into these guys. And, there was a graveyard there. And in my dream, I saw all the spirits of the Indians go onto to the subdivision. And I go, oh, I know where that is. you know. And I go, well, how are you going to keep these guys out? These spirits, they're going to. And there is another one like that too, another subdivision. It had the same issue, and I brought my friend to kind of do a ceremony to kind of get the energies. There's these energy spots, and he did a blessing, and it kind of worked, kind of, and